Say that again, Rob.
We get bass up, just 1 or 1.5.
Yeah, sure.
This is a really bad tune to soundcheck for hearing bass and stuff as well.
Yeah, it's kind of good for me though, because it's like, we're going to go from that.
Is it okay to get it over for me a bit?
Please.
Yes. I've turned from the house off now, so we've got men from there, but apart from that, I should be fine. Do you want to run some bits and pieces, or are you okay?
Yeah. Just join with that.
Yeah.
Oh, we can continue running stuff on stage, so yeah.
I'm Rob.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Chris.
And we're GoGo Penguin.
What I love about this group is that they have been so heavily influenced by what's been brilliant about British electronic music for years, Aphex Twin, Square Pusher, and groups like Flying Lotus, groups like Cinematic Orchestra. They've got all of that in there. There's a little bit of Bill Evans, a bit of EST, and it's fresh and perfect. It's like jazz without being jazz. It's something that I've always been championing for years and years, and I think the Far Show did so much damage in a certain way to jazz music, and the NME did so much damage to jazz music that people never quite kind of got the sense of it. And I think groups like GoGo Penguin, groups like Polar Bear, the scene that's been happening out of the UK for 40, 50 years now, way back to the days of Michael Garrick and even Ronnie Scott, they were making amazing music, and people seem to sort of put it aside thinking it's just not very cool, but it is cool, and it's very good for the mind, and it makes you dance, and it's strong.
Today, but it's beautiful and everyone's been really nice and looking after us really well.
Really nice in the park. I was thinking last night, because we had the meal and then we were walking through last night to get to the taxi, and there were just people everywhere still, quite, what was it, about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night or something. They're still kind of just, wandering with the families, or, people with their boyfriend and girlfriend. So it was really nice atmosphere, really peaceful. And
I'm looking forward to tonight. It looks like a nice. It's always nice when you do something a little bit different. We like this kind of thing.
The only thing I can think that's kind of similar is when we played in Switzerland recently, and that was up on the side of a mountain near. It was near Chamonix. It was just over into the Swiss side, bit near Chamonix, and that was beautiful. You know, it was a similar thing where you kind of turn up and somebody's just made a stage in the middle of nowhere, and it's beautiful countryside and trees and just that kind of nature atmosphere around you and fresh air and sunshine. You know, so we've done quite a lot of festivals, but usually you just see, you know, the usual kind of festival sites. Play differently depending on all the kind of venues that we play, because we're quite lucky that we get to come to places like this, but we also play tiny little clubs in basements, you know, concert halls and larger venues, but aimed more at maybe rock music and things like that. So we're lucky that we get to play that complete mixture, and it definitely changes how we play, because I guess you play to a different audience as well. You know, there'll be different people here that decided to come camping to who we might have at a tiny club, you know, just in the capital city or something like that.
Every environment's different, so like if we play a gig in a concert hall, it's a different atmosphere and people behave differently, you know.
It's what you've said before, where it's the two-way thing. You react from the audience and the audience reacts from what we do, so it's that, exactly.
Feedback loop.
Exactly, yeah. I think you're right when you say it, because you don't think too much about it necessarily before we go on, but the reaction that we get feeds us, and we'll play differently because of that, and like I say, keep cycling. So it does make a difference, but I don't think we worry too much before we go on. We'll be sensible, you know. If it was a more kind of relaxed, chilled out, peaceful kind of atmosphere, we won't play the really, really heavy stuff that's kind of really punky, but I don't know, sometimes maybe we would.
When I started playing an instrument, I was playing like indie music and stuff like that on bass guitar, and then kind of got into funk and hip hop and like a lot of crossover stuff like that, and electronica and just everything, whatever I could get my hands on really. So
Kind of the same for me. I mean, I think definitely, yeah. I mean, I studied classical piano from when I started when I was about 8 years old, and only really did classical music. But then I got introduced to a lot of rock and metal and things like that when I was probably about 11 or 12. I think so quite early on. And that actually made me want to play bass guitar. So I never played it very well, but I got really into it just for fun, and that was how I got into playing in bands. And then started to play piano, and I ended up playing synths and keyboards because it was obviously I wanted to play piano. I didn't want to play the bass. I just enjoyed that for fun. So it was, I did. I just wasn't good enough. No.
You want to talk about
get slapped in a second. No, it was just a good way of getting into playing in bands. It was easier because obviously my mates played guitar or sang, and exactly. And then listened to a lot of hip hop and a lot of drum and bass when I was quite young as well. And then I got introduced to jazz and started kind of getting into that world. Obviously, being able to play piano in bands.
Do you remember? And this is for both. Do you remember the first jazz artist that you listened to?
I do. Yeah, it was
got you into it.
and an Oscar Peterson CD, Oscar Peterson Trio, but I forget which one. So they were the first two things that were passed on to me.
That's difficult, actually. My mum had some jazz stuff, like an album by John Handy and a lot of soundtrack stuff like Lalo Schifrin from the 70s, who did like Man from U.N.C.L.E. and that kind of thing. And also an Oscar Peterson CD. I think that was again one of the earliest things. Me and Matt. I lived in this village with a friend of mine who was a piano player, and we didn't have a drummer, so we just used to play together all the time, trying to copy this Oscar Peterson CD really badly. We just started playing really. difficult because jazz encompasses so many things now, and so many things that are so different to what we do are classed as jazz, and if we're jazz as well, it just becomes very difficult. But don't mind. But it's...
As I said before, I don't think for us we don't bother calling it anything because it makes it easier for us to be able to do whatever we want to do. If we start calling it something, you put a box around your band and the music, and you say exactly, it's like, right, we've got to do these things now, or not necessarily we've got to do this, but you think, okay, I want to write a tune like Protest, and you go, well, we can't do that because we're jazz, we're not allowed to do that.
Can't do
Whereas
that.
if you
the
don't
bass has
say,
got to do a solo, and then the drums have got to do four.
I can't just smash power
How would you
chords.
do that? How would you do that? You're a jazz band, you're a trio.
I mean, it's not made easy by the fact that we're signed to Blue Note, the most famous jazz record label in the world, I guess.
Absolutely, I was going to say, you entered this family, you have a heritage, even though,
And I guess the kind of places that we were able to start playing in the early days when we first started playing, it was jazz gigs. That was where we were able to, because of friends that we had and because of the fact that we'd all played in that kind of scene, it was an easy way for us to get into getting some gigs. That was the way of getting playing. So I guess if you start there, it's difficult to lose that. And I don't think we're bothered about losing it though. If people want to call it jazz, it's totally fine. People
absolutely.
can call it anything they want to call it. I mean,
there's lots of things I love about jazz, really do. But
it's like when we were in Turkey like a few years ago, and that woman coined acoustic electronica.
Yeah.
She said she described it as if somebody were doing an interview.
Acoustic electronica.
Yeah, she described it as that, and we thought, it's a bit weird.
That's not bad, actually.
We were like, does it even exist? Is that a thing? But the thing is, if that makes sense and people like that and it works for the music, then that's great. But obviously, if we call it that and we don't even really know what it means, it's like,
Well, I can't talk about the first album.
So Nick wasn't on the first album. Yeah.
So I can, but
Rubbish. No, I think the first, we've kind of said before to people that it kind of feels a bit like it was practice. It was like it was an okay album. I think we're still happy with it. It's everyone's got to start somewhere, I guess. We've done things before that and we played together, but I think the main difference between Fanfares and V2.0, aside from Nick joining the band and bringing his kind of way of playing, was the fact that we wrote V2.0 much more as a band, whereas Fanfares was kind of more somebody wrote a tune and then we learned how to play it together, and there was still elements of people bringing their own ideas, but it was a lot less than it was when Nick had joined and we started properly making the music together and being very equal in the way that we view everyone's ideas. So if someone has an idea, you try that idea, even if you don't think it's going to work, you try it and see where it takes you, and we try and make sure that happens so that the music that's created is GoGo Penguin and not just my composition and then these guys play it, or somebody else's composition and we're playing it. It's a bigger thing than just one person then, because we all write it together, so it's much bigger.
More the sum of your...
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I mean, V 2.0 obviously for me was the starting point of being in the band, but I think it's fair to say that that's what we were aiming for, or you were aiming for, to sound like the first time, really.
Yeah, it was the kind of same ideas in the back of our mind, but I think with Nick joining and with the way that we started working as a band at that point, it made it possible to do what we tried to do in fanfares. And but I mean, fanfares did well for us because it got Gondwana interested in us, which is a small Manchester label, but I'm not saying small, he's doing pretty well, he's getting bigger.
He's doing well now, isn't he?
Matt obviously liked
it. You know, in the early days there was some talk about me being the manager of GoGo Penguin. Yeah, when I wasn't in it.
That would have been weird.
Yeah, it would have been very weird. Yeah, that would have been quite bad as well.
Yeah, it was good. Obviously, you know, Matt got interested in the music we were making and signed us, and it did okay. You know, it was a pretty successful album for that time, and yeah, it definitely got us started, which was the important bit. You know, it made people aware of what we were doing, and people liked the sound of what we were doing. So I think it's nicer as we've gone along. We've become ourselves rather than, you know, we used to get a lot of people say it reminds them of EST. Obviously, it's a nice compliment, you know. It's compared to EST is amazing, but at the same time, we want them to be an influence in the same way that Aphex Twin is an influence. You know, Queens of the Stone Age. Or any band, you know, that might have inspired us. We're not ever trying to be those guys or trying to be the next EST. It's like they were different
something of the energy, right?
Yeah. They were a big inspiration, I think, for me, especially like in terms of Espion as a pianist. He was incredible, I think. Like, you know, still listen back to him, he's unbelievable. And he was doing something that I think a lot of other jazz players that I'd listened to weren't doing, and for some reason it just appealed to me. I'm not saying it's better or worse, I just think it made more sense to me. I liked the sound of it more, and yeah, definitely inspired me a lot. That. But yeah, it was nice being able to kind of do that album and then move more towards doing what we did from V2.0 onwards. And
how did you get in on that?
well, we've all known, I mean, Rob and Nick have known each other for ages, and I'd known Nick. We'd actually played in a trio.
The Chris Illingworth trio a few years previous, yeah.
That wasn't very good. It was cool. It was the same sort of idea, wasn't it? We were trying to do a similar sort of thing, but It's just
Me and Rob have played so many gigs together in so many bands for a long time now, and me and Chris have done a bit of playing together as well, so I think when things weren't really working out, shall we say, with the old lineup, Rob asked me to join, and obviously you would have consented to that. Yeah. I just turned up one day. Hi, I'm your new bass player.
so not this guy again.
Man-made object.
It was tougher. Like it was, a different kind of.
It was a very difficult
Different
album
kind of
to make.
vibe, wasn't it?
That.
Why?
It was just a weird time, and it wasn't as easy as making V2.0 for some whatever reason. But
What was different?
well, going back to, I think there was a little bit of pressure on that we put on ourselves at that time. Everything was going upwards quite a lot, and I think because we timed with them, they were quite excited to get an album out, maybe a bit sooner than we were ready.
So this was adding to the pressure.
A little, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think we got there. It was just.
You got the.
Yeah, it was just a lot. I think when we did V2.0, I just joined the band and it was cool, and then we just kind of went off and did it, didn't we? And then with Man-Made Object, we felt a little bit more pressure. But we've just made the next one, and it's not ever easy making an album, but this next one I'm excited about, and I think it's better than Man-Made Object. So.
I think so. Yeah.
Which is a great album, so the expectations are really.
We'll have to see what everyone else thinks, so they might disagree. So.
When is it due?
January next year.
So close.
Yeah.
Just tell me a little bit about the next one. Does it stray away too much from the other one, the other one?
It's definitely moving somewhere else a little, isn't it?
I think we've done, it's been quite a while since we recorded Man-Made Object, so we've done a lot of gigging since then, and we've done.
You are a touring band, actually.
Yeah,
it's cool.
So I think all those sort of things, like travelling and playing together for a lot longer, getting a lot of gigs under our belt, it's made us play different as a band, but also just individually. I think there are things that we've done differently. So obviously, then when we took a new album, we brought all that together. So there are similarities. There's some similar things in there because we've not completely changed as people from the last album to this one, but there are different things we've tried to do different. Use different techniques and some different effects. Just moving forward. So there's different music. Trying to keep pushing all the time that we can. Keep pushing the kind of ideas that we work with and the techniques that we use. So I think we're all really happy with it. It's turned out really well.
It's more piano effects.
More piano effects, it's already been there on the last one. I've just taken his effects and copied.
I hand them down to him when I'm finished.
A generous guy.
Don't like this one, you can have it.
Raven was based. It's one of the new tunes on the new album. I guess it'll still end up being called Raven probably, but it was based on a little kind of sketch of a tune I made using a program called Reason years and years ago. Rob remembered it and like said, "No, we should dig that out and have a, see if we can make something out of it, playing it as a band." But the thing that inspired me with that was I don't know why, I've been reading a book called I can't remember. It's all about living with corvids. It's a woman who basically lives with crows and ravens and rooks and all these kind of birds, and they're incredibly clever. And she can give them like these puzzles and they'll solve them, and use tools to kind of catch food and things. And it's really crazy that they're very different in the way that they behave to other birds. But there's just something really cool about them. But I kept having this dream that I was playing chess against a raven, and it kept coming back over and over and over. Don't know why it kept happening. So
did it win?
It won't beat me every time. Yeah, like, there was never one where I beat it, and yeah, so that kind of inspired one of the tracks. But and I guess that obviously came partly from that book. It must have got into my brain and sat there and
underlying.
Yeah.
Movies or I don't know, any kind of art.
I think it's just whatever. I mean, we say this quite a lot that when we're making an album, it's like a snapshot of where we're at as a band at that time. So it's just in the process of when we're making things, whatever music or anything we're listening to kind of comes out. So like for V2.0, there was that sort of interest in Arvo. Yeah, so like there's that kind of thing which is we've shifted focus from that a little bit now, and it's sort of other things, and especially Rob is sort of like talking about house music a lot more and that kind of thing. So it's just whatever you're checking out at that time, be it like art, music, movies or something. It's obviously music because that's what we're making, but it just tends to influence you a little bit. I don't know, it's more general really.
I think that you can get influenced by lots of things that are kind of immediate in your own life, but I think that it's kind of subjective, like how that translates into a piece of music. So I guess ultimately it's kind of open to whoever is experiencing that piece of music to relate it to their
Translated it.
Yeah, because I think it's kind of unless it's something that's very programmatic, like deliberately programmatic.
You're just setting a concept and you're following.
Yeah, or if it's like, this is the story of Romeo and Juliet, and this tune is Romeo, and this is Juliet, and the symbols of the swords, and all that. I think, more like things that, like, I might be influenced by more sort of esoteric books or things that you might read about philosophy or this kind of thing.
Can I give you some names?
Yeah, like Nisargadatta or Geshe a lot. I think, yeah, I think now that especially Geshe-La's teachings are kind of more relevant than ever, right?
That's a good word for it.
Yeah, but then with all of that, because it just kind of like goes into this sort of subjective mush, the way you explain things like that in language, the whole reason to make a piece of music is that you can't explain it in language, so then to try and retranslate it on the other side or to say what it means is it's more of a feeling, I guess, and then I think everyone's experience in their own life, they'll have those feelings in different moments, reacting to different things. So if you have that kind of more internal view of what you're trying to make, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand.
Sense. Like that thing in indie music, right? You pick a kind of sound world, and if you jump too far away from it, especially if you're doing it every single beat or every bar, like going now G major, C major, D major, A major, A flat, it's a bit like jazz. It's that kind of like Scottish. But I mean, like loads of jazz people got into that. So it's like George Russell, and it's really an old way of approaching harmony. So I don't think we, the kind of things that we like to express necessarily work with that style of...
I think it's, what we've said before, it's we try not to do anything that's unnecessary. So a lot of the time it feels like people can often add things just for the sake of it, or add it because it's clever to add it, or add it because somebody else is like, oh wow, look what they did with that kind of...
Do you get into that trap? I mean, making clever music.
Of course.
Is it a trap or not? I mean,
yeah, of course. Everyone
has that flatters the mind.
Yeah. You have like years of
that is jazz
programming, don't you? People telling you this is good, this is good. This is
you're expecting that something is going to.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone battles with that a little bit. If I play this bit really fast,
it's better.
Great.
It's not groovy, I'll play louder. Yeah. Oh, that didn't work. Faster.
Lots of different types of
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so I think like going back to the house thing. I mean, there's quite a lot of stuff that was influenced that didn't really make it onto the album for one reason or another. But yeah, this is kind of like. I don't know, it's just like a textural thing, especially with the kind of underground house stuff, at the moment, so.
I mean, we've said it before, it's different depending on the track, because the tracks will have come from different places. Sometimes it's like a small fragment of an idea, sometimes it's a much bigger formed idea, and sometimes it's like really clear that it's like one person's kind of character in it, but then obviously we develop that and change it. It can start somewhere and get completely broken down and rebuilt into something different. And then there were a few on this. I mean, it was like with 100 Moons, we ended up with two versions, because there was a version that we made that was kind of an interpretation of the original vibe that Rob had made. But then there was another version that we ended up coming up with that was much more kind of, not jam so much, it's just we sort of just played around and it started forming, didn't it? Somehow like that. I don't actually remember how, we didn't at any point kind of go, here's the tune, or somebody
there's quite a few of them, because me and you went in for quite a while and
we did something in the rehearsal room, didn't we? Quite late at night. And then that tune is a good example, because remember we tried loads of stuff and I was saying it sounded like some sort of psychedelic prog 60s band, and then it obviously...
And it had the bit where the drums come in dead loud.
Yeah, which was a good idea, but we found something else that we thought was stronger. So we kind of do all that jamming ideas and I think we did a lot more of it on this album, but it all happens in the rehearsal room and then mostly in the studio.
It's easy to sometimes get attached to ideas when you're starting in good. So like Nick was saying with that version of Honey Moons, like I think, I remember being really into it, but then like you say, we find something that's better, something we prefer, and a different kind of way of playing it. And it's important to keep trying it and keep moving on, especially when we're rehearsing and coming up with the ideas and developing the ideas, because we had plenty of time to do that and plenty of opportunity to see where we wanted it to go. So, but sometimes it's easy to get attached to an idea and kind of.
I think it's natural in a way. Coming up with it.
Well, there's the worry that it could go the other way and you could totally ruin it rather than make something better. So I guess
it could be. Yes.
We generally try all the ideas, which makes making a GoGo Penguin tune ready. It's frustrating sometimes. It takes a long time. I don't know if you remember when we were doing Protest, how long we spent over a month thinking that all this stuff needed to happen, all these different changes of harmony, and then we just said it doesn't need to change. But this is after hours and hours of trying something, so it can be frustrating.
I think, it tends to be that we've had occasions before where we've written something and played it and actually practiced it and then got to the end and gone, it doesn't sound like us, it doesn't feel like us. We can't really necessarily explain why, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like something we should be playing.
That happened more when I just joined, and remember we spent hours on that track that sounded like Bonobo. We thought we were getting somewhere with this.
We do that on every album. We did that on this album as well. There's always a Bonobo.
For this one I was thinking this is going to be great.
We've got out 4 of them.
That's true. We do have these tunes in. I mean, we should get in touch with Bonobo, so if you're struggling, we've got some tunes. Our manager's got some weird track record where he's been involved in about 4 or 5 nominations, and he'd kind of mentioned that it would be good to get the Mercury nomination. And so we were kind of thinking maybe it could happen, and then it did happen, and it was just as surprising because we'd forgotten that we'd even entered for it at that time. And then when it all came around and we did the sort of, what is it, ceremony? What is it? It's not ceremony.
That's something I
don't know. It did a lot for us. It was really good. It's a very strange environment. But,
why do you think?
Because I guess we're from a different world to a lot of. Even though the Mercury Prize is seen as quite a left field thing in the pop world, it still feels like there's a lot of pop acts, and it does feel like an act for a lot of them.
I was going to say a lot of them acting like celebrities,
and we're just 3 guys who play some music.
It's like a kind of noble.
People like wandering around, like even though it's like they got the costumes on. It's just like, I think one artist sound checked and wasn't actually there for the sound check because it's all backing tracks on it. So it's just a whole different. It's just a different vibe. But it was great to be involved because what it did for us was amazing.
It was funny with people wearing like full on, you know, did obviously like had somebody plan an outfit with them, and it was really special, you know, and I'm thinking I've made an effort by putting a shirt on, like a t-shirt. So
it was cool though.
Really
like people like Damon Albarn who've been around for so long, he was just like in with the rest of us, you know, having a cup of tea and
cool. Yeah, it was really
relaxed.
Yeah.
So
Haven't we been somewhere the day before as well? Because I remember having to go to sleep on a couch because there was nowhere, because all the artists have to share one room, apart from the really special ones that get their own room. So I had to have a nap on the couch next to the security guard at the front entrance, and all these, like, you know, celebrities kept walking past and looking at me, so it was just like,
Who's this guy?
it's just sleep. It's really weird.
but it
Kind of festival or we've been abroad or something.
I can't remember. It sounds
We
familiar.
were knackered, I remember that.
yeah, don't know. Either way, it did a lot for us. It was really, really good. It's a good thing though.
Because of the way we initially started, which was we were doing other things and we just got together and started making tunes kind of for the crack of it, and the gigs kind of got bigger and bigger and we never really considered or thought about it. So I think, I don't know, I kind of think that the general idea is to try and have like make it more about the sound that's coming across and try just not really to distract too much from that. Not in like the classical way where you're gonna, like, you know, put on your identical suits and stand totally still and try not to breathe. You know? But just
You're not a human, you are an android.
So it's kind of informal in that sense, but I think there's not very much theatre because we're just really, I mean, we can't even take a photo.
It doesn't suit us really.
It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, so it's more just like, you know, it's there, we're making music on the stage.
Making a statement through your sound, right?
I think so. We're just all we were really able to do.
Just being ourselves as well, because it's not in our nature. And like, if Chris started getting up and going, "Come on, everybody on the left," you know, like, what are you doing? We'd probably sack it. I was going to do that.
So you won't do it anymore. I will tell everybody. It's going to do that. Just prepare.
we worked it out. Is about average about 8 hours a day in airports or on airplanes.
Yeah, that's the killer, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's definitely difficult at times, but it's part of our job, and the job's great. It's just there are some times where it's so hard, and especially it's probably going to get a little bit better for us now, because when we first started, I know, yeah. When we first
You will
started,
have expectations now.
I know I shouldn't say it, but when we first started, it's just like you're trying your best to let everybody know about you, and you do all these gigs, and we still do that to an extent, but in the UK maybe it's a bit easier now because we've got more of a name, and in the US it's we
was it in the US, by the way?
It's been going really well, yeah. I mean, we're out there from next week pretty much. We go to Japan next week for a couple of days and then go pretty much straight from Japan over to the US, and we're doing a tour for a full month.
That's good.
So it's going to be busy, but it's been going pretty well for us.
Thank you very much, and have a great gift.